Okay, so uh, all right. Let's start with Redlines with Onion Parampel from the Gray Zone, uh, and uh, and a report they put out called copoganda. So it's basically a propaganda done by the cops, and this touches on all that propaganda that was done on national TV that's also gone international. We got Sheriff Swanson and that other Acevedo in Texas, the other sheriff in Texas, uh, and then you got the kneeling cops and the kneeling National Guardsmen, the National Guard rather, uh, and talking about solidarity and we're just gonna be away. We're not gonna go after the peaceful protesters. Except, I didn't buy it. I didn't buy it for a second. And Redlines propaganda report spells out exactly why I didn't buy it. Um, and I've wrote comments about how disappointed I am with protesters, especially black people buying this garbage, considering how brutal that these Swanson and Acevedo have been as the head of the sheriffs, the top sheriffs, also including how they've basically made it so that you're not charged with a crime, yet you've been arrested, you've been put in jail, and you can't. And they've been using the tactic of, oh, you need to pay to be able to talk to your family, over the phone. Or now now you have to pay to be able to go in and see, have your family come in and see you. Uh, and these are the sort of stuff that they talk about on Red Lines. Also, you also had Jimmy Dore reporting about how uh, after the kneeling propaganda, they went, from 1 hour to like 10 minutes, you know, back to beating back to beating the crap out of people and shooting at them and tear gassing them and macing them you got the one in Buffalo, Buffalo, the one with the 75-year-old elderly man who was knocked down onto the sidewalk. And it was the same place that the Buffalo police did that kneeling propaganda. And 24 hours later, they knocked down that elderly gentleman. And we don't know what the condition of him, if he's even alive. So I never bought it, and I'm also disappointed in other protesters talking about uh, doing the work for the propaganda media. Talking about don't loot, don't vandalize, don't do all this other stuff. Except that's a generalized thing. Rather than talking about okay, when you're looting, you're looting. If there's looting and so on and so forth, it's they're going or vandalizing or destruction of property. It's it's the lot of them are about the property that's owned, the buildings and other stuff that's owned by the wealthy, the big corporations, the big retailers, and so on and so forth, or a police station where you have criminal. You got a criminal gang calling themselves police. Never mind the fact that that in the South it was the Texas Rangers and police were basically slave patrols to go after escaped slaves and to keep them from misbehaving in any arbitrary way they dictate. Or how up in the North it was the police were used for protection of property of the wealthy elite. Um, then you also have the governor of New York, Cuomo, placing property over he stated it twice. Looking out for the property and then as a throw in, protection, not doing things to peaceful protesters. So you got that, and then you got all the evidence of all the violence that's perpetrated by these criminal organizations calling themselves police. Start instigating and starting all this. You got the police who are going around breaking windows and setting buildings on fire, throwing, gathering bricks, embedding themselves within the protests so that they can push people into the cops, into these criminals that call themselves cops. You got all this going on. And then there's another point that Redlines points out, is the complicity of the so-called lawyers. And how, so think about it. It's the same thing that you heard about how Al Capone and all these others operated. The police are basically enforcers for the mafia, and the sheriffs and the police chiefs and the benevolent order of police. They're basically the mafia dons, or however they're the heads of the organized criminal organizations. That's basically what it boils down to. The police are the enforcers and the leg breakers and so on and so forth. Just like the Pinkertons were. Just like the brown shirts that came before the Pinkertons. Those were organized criminals. And, the brown shirts and the Pinkertons were, many of them, actually most of them, were part of the KKK or white nationalists or whatever. So we've seen this, and we've seen how it's bled in, and that it's centered on protecting the property of the wealthy and the politicians. I've been rewatching the show, the series Leverage, and a lot of the stuff that you see on Leverage is stuff that's coming to light. That it's not fiction, that it actually does take place, and so people have to wake up and understand that your skin color doesn't matter. I mean, that 75-year-old old man was a white guy. That didn't stop them from knocking him down. And he was, and the way I see it, he was probably uh, a slightly more affluent middle class gentleman. Probably owned his own house and so on and so forth. You got eminent domain. You got the I forget the other one where the cops can basically stop you and accuse you of anything, and then they can just take whatever they want, and even go as far as look up take your take all the information and go after your homes. Which Biden was one of the key guys that allowed that atrocity to become law. We got the fact that the police are getting hundreds of billions of dollars, yet yet our schools are getting defunded. Yet rather than we used to have busing that didn't cost. Now we have to pay for busing, textbooks, and all that other stuff. We used to get funding for new textbooks. Now the budgets in the schools are so bad that they can't get new textbooks. Of course, there's also complicity of criminal corruption within the school boards and school institutions. So you have all that. You got redlining. You have basically a gentrification happening everywhere, to the point that the property values, where your mortgage and your rents are at ridiculously stupid levels, where you just can't make enough money to pay for it, or if you're paying for it, you're paying half or more of your well over more than half of what you bring in. And then you got the cost of your food, and the quality of the food is drastically horrible. Just look at the commercials you see on TV for breakfast cereals and everything else. I mean, everything is sugared, and yet the commercials say it's so nutritious and so on and so forth. Nutritious and so on and so forth, and it's so packed with energy. And then you got all these energy drinks, which have massive amounts of caffeine, massive amounts of sugar, massive amounts of salt and everything else. Gee. And then you have, like you're paying for bottled water, which is the concept of having to pay for bottled water. That's another atrocity. That is just another atrocity. And then you have all this with lead, arsenic, and other heavy metals, and all these other, and you got benzene and all this other stuff getting into your drinking water. And it's nationwide. It's I don't understand. I cannot understand how people can buy this when we personally can see the crunch. We complain about it, and we can in our own personal lives, and yet we still buy these lies, these outright, blatant lies. We don't seem to understand that we are considered by the structures of government to be the enemy, the criminals, the peasants and serfs and slaves. I think when we come to understand that those who are on the upper echelons of the financial and economic ladder, who own basically everything, which includes us, that we have become property to be so that they can dictate however. And if they're having a moment of peevishness, they can do whatever. That it doesn't matter if you're a judge, you can still be you can still be arrested and put into jail. I mean, we have an actual example of a Democratic governor who was accused of all sorts of things, and he was put in jail. This is a governor of a state, and this was done by the Republicans. But the Democrats didn't speak out. The Democratic politicians didn't speak out about it. Didn't push back. So it doesn't matter what your position is. If you do not have the money, even as a politician, even as a judge, I mean, you have police captains who have been either pushed out, or have had to face penalties. And all, why? Because they bucked against the criminal mob bosses and the lower mob bosses and the captains and so on and so forth. That's what it comes down to. You know, and what it is we're fearing, while we're being whipped into this fear, while we're concerned about the immediate impacts, they keep bleeding. They keep doing. They keep making policies and regulations and rules and statutes and everything else, taking away more and more and making it more arbitrary and criminalizing us even more. We keep making it so it is assured that they can make it so that making ends meet gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Being able to have safe, natural, and nutritional food gets worse and worse. I mean, we got examples of baby food. 20, I think it's like 20 baby top baby foods, and they were found with high amounts of heavy metals, and we know the effects of that. It affects the physical If it affects the mental, it affects the immune system. It contributes to um, it contributes to autism and all the other stuff, as well as uh, future cancers and all this other stuff. And yet, that's not enough. That's not enough. Never mind what Monsanto, never mind what Dow Chemicals, never mind what the factory animal farming and factory agricultural farming. It, it just overwhelming information that's saying that we have no rights. We have no freedoms. That we are the ruled. When are we gonna when are we going to grow up? When are we going to understand? When are we gonna stop waiting for change and going out there and making change? Will it require having 60-70% of us where we look like where we look like uh, the Holocaust, uh, the Holocaust uh, in the concentration killing camps, where we're all skin and bone, without the outfits that without the clothing that makes us look like we're prisoners. Is that what will be required? At that point, how do we fight back? Will it require finding out that that everything and anything that we do is going to poison us, cause us illnesses, mental breakdowns, emotional breakdowns? Will it come to that where the vast majority of us find out that there is nothing safe or sacred before we come together to fight? I mean, Gunnar from Hardlands Media did a research, and he checked into federal and federal courts and the Supreme Court rulings about what the role of the police are. And the role of the police is to protect the property of the ultra wealthy, of those of the ruling owner class, and the political and the political uh, and the political enforcers, the ones that we call state, congressional, and mayors, and judges, state Congress, local uh, political political leadership or managers, all the way to the federal. It's cut and dry. And the thing is if we but Google it, it's right there. It's right there. But we're but Too many of us want to believe that we can't trust our lying eyes. We can't trust our lying senses. We can't trust our lying life experiences. We can't trust our righteous anger. When? When? When will it be time to come to understand that we have commonality, that we must come together? When?